everyone, it's Nicole and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to show you what I've been up to this Thanksgiving, and I pretty much revamped my grow space. I've got a couple of new shelves right there, and I'm going to walk you through all of the updates and changes I made to the room. And I got a little bit more organized. I made a little bit more room. So come with me and I'll show you the updates that I just made. So what I did was I got a 2-foot shelving unit to add to the grow space. I currently have two 3-foot by 72 inches shelves in the back, but this one is 2 feet by 60 inches. I am going to add this to the grow space, and I'm going to move the humidifier to the top of the shelf since it's a little shorter and a little more easily accessible. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to assemble the lights and start adding them to these shelves. So I've added these lights. These are from the Orchid Hobbyist. I will link them down below. These are 2-foot lights, and I've attached them to my grow shelves with some zip ties. And I'm going to cut off the extra material of the zip ties to make it look a little bit more tidy. But I've added them to the shelves, and then I am going to move things over so that I can fit this new shelf. So I've moved a little bit of my shelves a couple of inches over. I've made a little bit more room. Everything fits perfectly. And I just wanted to make sure it fit before I started with the extra wiring. Now, with the wiring, what I did was I zip tied everything pretty tight and just to hide and try to conceal the cords. And I did it all with these zip ties as well. And I was able to daisy chain everything, and then I just have one plug to deal with. So I put everything together. And what I can do now is I can work on bringing the cords behind the other shelves so that I can then conceal it and then put everything together. As you can see, everything's pretty tight. I cut the extra material of the zip ties. So with the cords all plugged in, I put the shelf in, and now all I have to worry about is tucking in everything in the back to make it look seamless. So I like to hide the cords. Mostly because of my cat and also because of the way it looks. It looks a little bit cleaner that way. And then I have it set on a timer where I'll put a link down below of this switch, but I have it in a timer and I have everything daisy chained to 1 for this shelf, and it works pretty nicely. I also moved my humidifier over, and of course my cat is very curious about the setup. So this is what it looks like all together. So here's a quick tour of everything. I have the lights on, so I'll show you with the lights on and the lights off so you can see things a little bit more clearly. But what I've done is I've made a little bit of separation with some of my orchid types. So I've got my catasetums at the bottom, and these will go dormant at some point, so I want to make sure they're together. Then I've got my oncidiums, which are a little bit taller. I've got them together. They get watered a lot. And then I have my semi-hydroponic orchids up top. And I'm going to be adding a heat mat to this because I want to make sure that they're establishing well. I also have my humidifier up there along with different orchids in bud, different orchids in spike. This was intentional. And I just wanted to maintain the humidity there. I also was able to lower it a little bit because it was really hard to get it at the top of the other shelves. I've pretty much what I've done is I've moved everything so that things are a little bit more spaced apart. There's obviously more room between things, and I've made more space so that I can add some of my other houseplants if I want to, now that it's winter and I'm getting less sunlight. And what I've done is I pretty much created just a little bit more separation so that my orchids aren't touching. And on this top shelf, these are some of my taller orchids and any orchids in bloom so that I can keep everything eye level, which is something nice where you could walk in and you could sort of see what you have in bloom and it's right in your face. You don't have to look at you don't have to fish on the bottom shelf for it. So in a nutshell, this is the setup, and I will take you closer with the lights off. So with the lights off, it's a little bit easier to show you because I have 2 different kinds of lights, so the color temperature is all off. But this is what everything looks like all completed. I've moved a larger oncidium down into the grow shelves, And this is pretty much it. I have around 75 orchids on these shelves, and I'm really happy with the outcome. So this is it. I'm really happy with this. So let's dig a little bit deeper. So I've already shown you this new shelf, and this is where I've added my humidifier. On the top, I'm considering adding a couple of lights potentially in the future for some of my tall spiked orchids. I could see that as future potential for more room, provided I get more orchids. But for now, I'm going to hold off since I have so many and it takes quite a while to water. But I have my humidifier there strategically with some of the orchids that need a little bit more love. I'm going to be adding a heat mat to that shelf. And let's start from the bottom. So on the bottom, as I've mentioned, these are all of my catasetums, and I group them together because they will go into dormancy together. So I'd rather not have to worry about watering them this winter as much and keep them on the bottom. So I've got them grouped together. So they're not quite dormant yet. There's one orchid, one of these catasetums has a new growth coming in. So let me show you a little bit closer. There is a new growth coming in on this one. I'm going to wait until the spring to repot it, but it's not quite ready for dormancy yet. Moving up to the shelf, it's a little bit taller. I've got my oncidiums here, and the leaves tend to be a little bit longer. And these also get watered very often. So I have it here in the middle just so that I have easy access to watering because they are in clay pots and they dry out very, very quickly. So I have my Diachia hendersoniana here as well. This one gets watered almost every day because it's in a chunky mix and it's a small pot. So I've got them all together. These are my moisture-loving plants. Moving up to the top, I've got my semi-hydroponic orchids. I will make a video on some of these. I'm transitioning some of them long-term, so I'm going to make a video in a couple of months once the results are in. But I'm going to be adding a heat mat to this to make sure they transition very well. I strategically have it close to that humidifier so that they get good moisture. And yeah, it's at the top of the shelf, so I could keep a close eye on it and make sure that the roots are doing well. This is a more challenging grow method, so I want to make sure that I'm keeping a good eye on these and that they establish and don't fail. I feel like it definitely takes a lot more work in the beginning with semi-hydroponic orchids. They have to establish, some roots die off. You know, it's much easier with a traditional medium, just to be very frank, but long term, I want to experiment with this to make my life easier when it comes to watering, especially after quarantine and when I get back to work. I need to make sure that this collection is manageable and easy for me. So this is why I'm experimenting with this grow method, and more to come there. Moving on to the next few shelves, I did add a strip of lights down here. And I used to have this as storage, so those are some Vanda baskets. So I've added a light here so that I can get more space for some of my orchids. And I have an assortment here. I have a Dendrobium seedling, Brassavolas, and I've also got a Cattleya. And this will have a little bit lower light. I may shuffle this around a bit, but moving up, I've got two Cattleyas very close to the lights, as you can see. These are taller orchids, and they're all pushing out new growths, so we'll see how it does under these orchid hobbyist lights. I've also got an assortment of a couple of other orchids here. Moving on to the next shelf, I've got some novelty Phalaenopsis and Phalaenopsis species. I've also got a couple of seedlings that are establishing a little bit better. In semi-hydro and some in organic medium. I've got my Zygo, and I've got a taller Wilsonara Pinky Eye Candy here. I think it's happy in that corner. It's a little bit taller, but I've tucked the leaves a little bit further back. Moving to the top shelf, I've got some orchids that have taller spikes, such as my Phalaenopsis. I've got a second spike growing, which is great, and I'll show you guys this in the next bloom update for December. But anything with a spike, I have it here. I was surprised to see when I was shuffling my orchids that I found a spike on my Heaven Sent Sweet Baby. So I'm so excited about this because it just went out of bloom and I just repotted it less than 2 weeks ago. So that was a really nice surprise. I've got my Oncidium Twinkles here, and I've also got my Yellowbird here. I've got it here because it's been getting a little bit burned under the lights, so I wanted to put it under a shelf where it's further away from the lights for now. Moving on, I've got my Dendrobiums and I've got my Miltassia Darkstar Orchid Works here because it's in bloom and I want to make sure it's the first thing I see when I come in. I've got 3 high output Monios lights here. I'll link you to a video down below where I show you all the lights that I have, but these are high output lights. The orchids are doing pretty well here. They're just my tall Dendrobiums here. Below that shelf, I've got my Cattleyas, and I've spread things out so that they are not all touching any longer. I've got a Vanda, and I've got my Neostylus Fuchs Ocean Spray, and I've got my Waterculture Vanda, which is doing really well on this shelf. This is a very high output light shelf, pretty much. I've also moved some of my Cattleyas a shelf down. Obviously, you could see there's a lot more room. And then I've added my Oncidium, which was on my windowsill, down here just because I think it needs more light. Now that it's winter, I'm getting much less light than before, and I've got my Phalaenopsis here as well. It's spiking, so I eventually have to move it, but I also have my Maxillaria tenafolia and my Shari Baby in the back corner there. All of these obviously have to move when they're spiking, except for the Maxillaria tenafolia, but this is how I've organized all of these grow shelves. So that is it. I think I do have a little bit more room for more orchids, but I'm going to hold off for now just because I have so many and I find that it takes me a while to water them. So I think I'm on my limit for now. I think if I do choose to expand, I do have plenty of room. If I take a look at the top, I have a ton of vertical space, so I could theoretically add some floodlights and add some orchids to the top, especially the ones that are like big spikers, especially the Oncidiums and the Phalaenopsis. My Oncidiums have 4-foot spikes sometimes, so they might fit nicely up there. I do have pretty tall ceilings. So this is going to be an option in the future should I choose to expand my collection significantly. Otherwise, I think I'm just going to use this wall. And then I'm going to add a little bit of furniture to this room. Just keep this to one corner, not let this take over the entire room. So I do have my cat litter box in the corner there, and I do have a radiator here. So the temperatures tend to stay pretty warm in here. It's 74 degrees right now with 52% humidity, and I do use that Levoit humidifier, which I really like because you can set a humidity level and it'll turn on and adjust until you get to that humidity level. So I typically set it to 60% humidity and it does the rest. Now I do have a window in here. The light isn't very strong, to be candid. I get light at an angle for about 1 to 2 hours and it's not very strong. So everything is grown exclusively under lights, and it's just because this room just doesn't get too much, just because it's in the back of the apartment and facing a couple of different buildings. So this is it. These are my new grow shelves. I hope you guys like this video. This is how I'm going to be growing these orchids. I'm really excited to see how everything does with this new setup. I really like the humidifier in that upper left-hand corner. It's going to be much more accessible for me to take it down and fill it up. And I'm really excited to see how my Catasetums do, to be honest. I'm happy I was able to group them together. They will go into dormancy together. Hopefully, we will see maybe a couple of spikes before the winter comes. Who knows? But I will keep you posted. I will also be adding a heat mat to my semi-hydroponic orchids on the upper left-hand side. And I will keep you guys all updated. I am very happy with how this came out. This is a spare bedroom where I grow my orchids, and I've got them against one wall, and I've got room on the other side for a fan, some storage, and some other things. I'm going to be adding a little bit of furniture here soon. Anyhow, thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel for more orchid updates on how I grow my orchids here in New York City. If you're on Instagram, give me a follow. It's Nicole Deanna Orchids. And thanks so much. Have a great week, everyone. Bye.